Welcome to the All Access Podcast from the experts at Tariffs. Each episode, we'll talk about technology topics, trends, or solutions that manufacturers need to know in today's rapidly evolving times. Sit back, enjoy the discussion, and let us know what you think.
Hello, my manufacturing friends. Welcome to the All Access Podcast. I am your host, Michael Thiessen, and we're going to be talking about the future once more again. And for that, of course, we're talking to an old seasoned veteran that has been on the show now multiple times, kind of giving us the outlook and the forecast of what's happening in the automotive industry. If you've listened before into some of the other episodes that we have done, you probably know this person. But if you're new to the All Access Podcast, we have an individual here that is truly an expert when it comes to the forecast. He is the CEO and president of the AutoForecast Solutions. He has been more than 25 years experience of providing the auto industry advisory and forecasting services. And he has really the finger on the pulse of what is happening. Nothing gets by him what's happening in the automotive industry. Of course, we're talking to Mr. Joe McCabe. Joe, welcome to the All Access Podcast again.
Michael, thanks again, and always that kind introduction.
Well, you deserve it because you truly have the finger on the pulse on what's happening. Last time we talked was a year ago. 2024 was the year. And I know we spoke a little bit earlier about this, but was there anything that surprised you at the when we were talking last year? And I don't want you to go back in your memory of what happened in 2024, but was there anything that surprised you, or was pretty much what you told everybody was going to happen? Did it happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, forecasting business, it's always great if we get it right, but it's always a moving target. Look, in terms of surprises, we weren't necessarily surprised. We never drank the BEV Kool-Aid. We knew that at the end of the day, there was policy and there was agendas and governmental and environmental. But at the end of the day, the consumer drives this market.
Right.
And there are still hurdles. There are still hurdles on the cost side, the range side, even though it's getting better, the infrastructure that doesn't always work everywhere. And now if I had to put in the idea of, today versus 12 months ago, obviously a Trump presidency is making things a little more volatile in terms of where investment strategies are going to happen, tariffs on, tariffs off, anti-Chinese, you name it. We still had China coming into our forecast in North America through Mexico, late 26. Yes. We'll probably dial that back if we had to make a change to more like 27, but they're coming. There's not this, it might be a slower adoption rate, but they are coming. The biggest thing with anything in forecasting is the more disruption, the more people put the brakes on investment strategies.
Right.
And that's what we're sort of hearing is the underlying theme of the day.
Okay. So you gave us the perfect segue into 2025 now. Tell us, what's the current state of the industry? You already alluded to that, of course, a lot of things have changed since the beginning of the year with the Trump presidency taking over and making things interesting, say no least, for you especially, because things change quite a bit. And you have to pivot quite a bit from your side to kind of see, okay, where are we going today and what's happening in the automotive industry? So give us a little bit of an idea of what is the current state in the automotive industry in terms of overall production and sales, inventory, all these kind of things that, of course, the consumer and everybody else sees.
Yeah, I mean, look, the high water mark in North America production has been 2016 over 17.8 million units. We have told people we're never going to get back to that. In fact, we're going to be just above 15 million this year in terms of production. And that is where the interesting part happens, because we deal a lot with the supplier community. And the supplier community has to deal with manufacturers that have been in the business for over 100 years. Some are newer, obviously, and obviously a lot more legacy players. And the script doesn't change in terms of how manufacturers work with suppliers. So the manufacturers are like, look, there's competition out there. We have to bring costs down. We go to use supplier to give us the best price so we can do that. Well, when volumes were higher, that's an easier thing to do. Hey, I'm a supplier of a widget. If you give me more volume, I'll give you a better price. But when the volume is 2 million units less a year than the high water mark, and they're trying to play by the same script, the supplier goes, I can't play by the same script. There are geopolitical issues. There are material costs. There are this idea that you're giving me less volume and I cannot get to that price concession you want. Mm-hmm. And manufacturers go, well, do it or else. And you go, well, then we're at else right this second. Then you layer in all the new players that are here. And look at Tesla. Tesla's a legacy player from our perspective. You're talking about 15 years in this business, right? So you got to put them on a shelf. But all these new players are trying to say, I need to be competitive. I have a cool product. I'm trying to hit a new consumer. And I'm going to have to do it with razor thin margins. And they rely on the supplier community to do that. Mm-hmm. That is separate from any kind of tariff conversations, which are now layered in. Now, if we had to call something last year that we didn't expect this year is, with a Trump presidency, he definitely wants to renegotiate USMCA in 26. Yes. All these moves against our border partners, Mexico and Canada, are posturing for the 2026 renegotiation of USMCA, which he wants to actually move up a little faster. Right. We weren't expecting such aggressive tariff targets on our connecting partners. We were expecting them more on Europe and China.
Correct.
So that's something we would have not put in our forecast, that if he came in, if it was a Biden presidency, he would have probably just ran in, not made any changes, and the relationship would have been a little different from our border. Now, his actions obviously are, based on, drugs and illegal crossings, things like that. And each time he throws a threat, people respond.
Oh yeah,
he's batting 1,000, right? He's batting. Yes, you'll get people to push back. He'll go, great. I'm going to push back even harder. And go, fine, we'll give.
Yeah.
So he's got momentum, and that momentum is not going to change. The next one's going to be Europe, where they only charge us. We only charge them 2.5%. They charge us 10%. Now Europeans aren't buying American cars, and that's because we sort of evacuated that market. Mm-hmm. But we're looking at Europe, we're looking at China, and it's been a really interesting go in terms of who's exposed to tariffs and how each manufacturer is sort of answering the call of how do we answer today's problem, but also looking from a long-term strategic solution.
Right. You mentioned earlier something that I kind of look at with almost like a two-faced scare a little bit, because you talked about the Chinese are coming, if that's through Mexico or directly into it, with their vehicles that are extremely low priced. Of course, they're doing this on purpose in order to gain capital in the market. But when I just came back from Europe not too long ago, and things over there have changed quite a bit, because of course over there it is wide open in terms of that particular market, of the Chinese flooding that market, and to the point of that VW and some of the other mainstream German markets are being pushed out, or almost getting into a situation where they have to close plants and all of that kind of stuff. Do you see that playing also a major topic when this happens down the line here, that we have manufacturing issues then happening because the cost of these vehicles are so low?
Yeah. So when the Chinese come to North America, they want market share first, profitability second. When Tesla started this market, it took them 11 years to make money. Every other manufacturer is losing money, hand over fist, in electrification. When the Chinese come, they're coming profitable. They're going to come with a solid product. Now, even if they use a local supply base, which will then increase the cost, they will take a hit on the cost of the vehicle just to build market share. And once they build market share, then they'll get the momentum they want, and then they'll keep moving along. So that's where we think the Chinese are going to really play. And when China comes, it's not just here's a low-cost solution. Here's a low-cost, high-quality solution. When the Koreans came to North America, the product was junk, right? It was a buy one, get one free kind of conversation. If you look at them 30 years later, they are a force to be reckoned with because
Oh,
every
absolutely.
iteration of their product got better and better with each program launch. And they're winning awards left and right with great. So they started with a great warranty. So consumers thought, oh, they're going to back their own product. All of a sudden, technology loading, great idea of running people through Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis and right on
Mhm.
through the value chain of their product. They're really sitting in the driver's seat. So the Chinese are going to do a similar model. They're going to say, well, what do people want? I'm going to give 100,000 a 1 mile warranty, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to give people what they want. So we can give an optics. We can clean up, go, look, we're not the bad Chinese. I don't know why you're considered us bad Chinese. We're here to help. We're going to have a great product at a low price. People are going to say, yeah, you're right. Let me go try them out. And the
Right,
first iteration is going to use a local supply chain. It's going to look great. And the second iteration is going to bring all the Chinese over to be their own supply chain and squeeze the other
right,
suppliers out. This is how it always works, right?
right, right.
Well, I mean, the German manufacturer came, the Japanese manufacturer, Korean manufacturers, they all had a business model and what was the sweet spot at that time.
So what do you think our U.S. 2.5 car manufacturers? I mean, their eyes must be open to kind of see this in order to prepare themselves, in order to say, you know what, we need to compete with that because if they're coming in, there might be lights out.
Well, you know what? North America is different than any other market in the world. We deal with big pickup trucks and large SUVs.
Hmm.
This is where Europe, don't have those size vehicles. It's not the volume size
That's
vehicle. So if
correct.
you bring a smaller Chinese vehicle in there, they can compete right away. When you're coming in here and you're doing a smaller Chinese vehicle, you're going to try to buy that that lower market, right? You're going to
Yeah,
buy, hopefully, a lot of the Detroit Three have moved out of the sedan market, but you still have the Asian-based manufacturers and Korean-based manufacturers, and the German manufacturers in that space.
right.
That's going to be a nice spot. If they bring a pickup truck over, that's where we're going to say, okay, now you got to really take on the big boys. And
Yeah,
the big boys have lots and lots of variants, everything from a Maverick and a Ranger in Colorado and a Silverado and Sierra and F Series, right? They have the whole gamut.
yeah,
That's where the profit is. So it's going to take some time when the Chinese come. It's going to take them several generations to be a market share momentum shift.
right.
And the only way they're going to do that is they got to get into the larger vehicle space. Now they
Yeah,
could, because they've been borrowing our technologies for Western technology and intelligence for the last 30 years to build
yeah,
what they know the consumer is going to be. But that's why every other market's a little different in North America. It is definitely going to be the product portfolio that's going to help us keep a Detroit 3 and local strengths.
right.
But that's not saying that they can't pull a Hyundai Kia model, come in with something, and 30 years later be a force to be reckoned with.
Do you see with I mean, at Stellantis, Tavares is out.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer the head of Stellantis, so now we have a new CEO of Stellantis. Do you see that the model, because before they had a lot of platforms that they're basing everything on, with the EV and the ICE vehicles and all of that they had everything pretty much there. Do you see anything change with Stellantis over the next year or so?
Yeah, so our view on Stellantis is they bloat, right? There's 14 different brands globally.
Yeah,
And if you look at their brands and you think about the heart of what the manufacturer is, Chrysler
yeah,
at the heart, there is one vehicle. It's a Pacifica.
yeah,
They killed what was called the Airflow, then the Iconic. There's a rumored of another one coming, a BEV version. I think they're going to dial back and say, even if they do, they'll have two Chryslers globally.
yeah,
And so we find it interesting that there's a lot of conversation of, hey, that's an important brand, but what do you do with it?
yeah.
Something's got to give. They have
Hmm.
way too many Jeeps out there. They have way too many Rams in terms of inventory. They got to
Hmm.
move that metal.
Hmm.
When it came to electrification strategy, zero emission vehicle states basically said, hey, if you want a Wrangler, you on the lot, you're only allowed to sell the plug-in hybrids, the 4
Yeah,
by Es.
yeah,
If you want an ICE version, fine, you can order it. So they're building this idea, this inventory up to fill their lots of vehicles that weren't being sold in volume.
yeah.
This does not discount the fact that they're not awesome vehicles. They're just not for everybody.
Right.
And they really sort of priced themselves out of the market. Ram had a really good shot of taking on GM and Ford. The
Mm.
quality came up. I mean, the Hemi was
Oh,
unbelievable. Like
beautiful.
there's so many
Yeah.
benefits, and then they just kept on bringing their prices to a point of going, you're knocking yourself out. Now I have to look at all the competition in order to understand it. Didn't come in that sweet spot anymore. So
Mhm.
If I had to give a benefit to Stellantis, they are investing in a flexible platform strategy. So
Right.
the Stella platform, STLA, is going to have 4 variants: frame, large, medium, and small. And they're going to be able to have flexibility that says, look, if I build a vehicle on this plant, I can have different propulsion systems. I can have the same exact line, and I can have an ICE, I can have a BEV, I can have a plug-in hybrid, I can have a standard hybrid, I can have an extended range vehicle.
Right.
That's where we see Stellantis is really reconfiguring their future of flexibility and looking at these evolutionary platforms, like we like to call them.
Right.
This also, interesting enough, we think puts risk on GM. See, GM went clean sheet. We're going to do a BEV truck, and that's all this thing can do. And they go,
Right.
uh-oh. We're trying to sell $96,000 Silverados and going, look, they're not bad vehicles, but that's a pretty expensive truck.
Yeah.
And then you got Ford in the middle that said, well, we're going to try something in the middle. We're going to take an existing F-Series. We're going to call it a Lightning. We're going to jam a battery in it. And then maybe over time, we might do clean sheet. Now, there are rumors out there, and I'm not going to say it's carved in stone, but there's rumor is that maybe the next generation Lightning doesn't exist anymore. Maybe they just roll it into this flexible architecture strategy of F-Series going in. So at one point, I think Stellantis is going through that rebirth. They're trying to really look at what they need to be when they grow up a little more. But I think you're going to see an attrition of their brands globally. You're going to see this idea of trying to be more flexible in their manufacturing footprint. Unfortunately, that is not something overnight. This automotive market works glacial speed. So, but we have to look at it on paper and say, look, strategy-wise, they probably have the most flexible platforms going in. Now, do I think they should bring back the Hemi? Yeah. I think there's conversations out there going, look, we got to keep a market out there. Let's keep that Hemi and let's throw it back into the Rams and try to keep that loyal base.
Yeah. I mean, they have that brand new, what is it, Charger that they brought out, the electric Charger there. Beautiful looking.
It's beautiful. It's cool. You got to, though, convince people that that's what they want, right? I mean, Ford tried to come out with the Mach-E as their, let's slap a Mustang on it. Looks nothing like a Mustang, but if we put a pony on it, maybe people buy it. They did. And then it just has degraded over time because you get the early adopters. There's going to be some takers in that space. But when you talk about Charger and Challenger, before it shifted over, they're only doing 150,000 units a year, both together combined. Yeah. Let's say you can at least get all of those buyers back, or you'll lose some and gain some, and you have a net sum zero. You're still looking at 150,000 units, which is, a small plant in automotive speak.
Yeah. So what do you think is going to happen? Because, I mean, all this time now we talked about the EV, the BEV, ICE vehicles. What is going to happen? Of course, these mandates were kind of thrown out the door with all of this that happened over the last several months here. But what if, and I know Toyota and Honda have been looking at other propulsion system, if that's hydrogen or other ways of propulsion. What if we put all of our money right now on EV and BEVs and all that kind of stuff, that everybody's looking at that, and all of a sudden comes Toyota or Honda and says, well, this is the new propulsion that is really the best of all of them, which is hydrogen. What is going to happen then?
Yeah, hydrogen's 20 years away, right? You got to follow the money. And I think I might have mentioned this before, right? If you look at just iteration of music, right, you have albums and 8-tracks and tapes and CDs and MP3 and streaming, right? Every one of those things has to layer in where the next dollar is going to be.
Yeah.
When you look at you look at the Asian-based manufacturers, these are legacy companies that want to be around for 500 years. Mm-hmm. They want to basically never go away. If they came out with hydrogen right now, they would get nothing out of the deal because people are so confused on electrification as it is. Now you're going to throw another, people are going to think it's the Hindenburg they're driving on. It's not, but there's an optics of it. You got to look at hydrogen as just another form of electric vehicle. So instead of plugging in the wall, you're going to find a new fuel source, which is hydrogen. It's going to move it. It's going to basically, electrochemical to mechanical footprint kind of direction. So you got to get people convinced of a non-ICE strategy first. Mm-hmm. Then when you have that shift, now you can layer in hydrogen. So when you're talking about a volume move to hydrogen, 20 years. You're talking about 3-4 life cycles out there minimum to move the needle, because you got to change the infrastructure. You got to get people thinking a little differently. If I had to pick on the thing that would look good in North America is extended range vehicles. So if we go back to the conversation that trucks are where the money is, good luck convincing a truck buyer in volume to go EV, right? Good luck.
Correct.
If you can figure that out, you're winning. And again, not a bad technology, just not for everybody. Now, if you do an extended range vehicle like the Ram Charger coming out, you're going to marry a big engine to a big battery. The vehicle is battery powered only, and the engine is a generator only, which means there's no transmission, means the engine never touches the axle for propulsion. You're going to get massive amount of range, and you're going to count it as a BEV because technically you never have to put gas in it. So Chrysler gets to have the opportunity, or Stellantis has the opportunity to say, I don't have to stop building 3.6 liter engines, which they're going to put in this thing, a big engine. I can continue to build batteries. I can sell it as a dual propulsion system. Actually, I lied. A single propulsion system, dual fuel based system, and meet my zero emission vehicle targets. They check every box. Now it's a smoke screen. Everyone's going to put gas in it, and when the generator's running, it's creating carbon, right? You still need a catalytic converter. You still need to convert this stuff, but that's going to get people to say, I have to determine in my life if a plug is not a disruptor. If I believe a plug is a disruptor in my life, I don't care the cost of the vehicle. I don't care about the technology of the vehicle. If I believe I'm going to be stuck on the side of the road, if I believe I'm going to go from, I'm outside of Philadelphia to Florida once a year with my family to go to Disney World and it's taking me 3 days instead of 1.5, I'm not going to buy it. So everyone could get out their Excel spreadsheet. Everyone could say, on paper, on month 13, I'm making money because of the gas price. But you got to look at the convenience factor, and that convenience factor is like a snowflake event. It is on a per consumer basis.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to get around that. So the long-winded answer of new propulsion systems, I think we're going to find hybridization is going to come back into favor because we're hopefully moving away from mandated electrification. If you get people to consider that, then all of a sudden now you might get some to shift into that BEV space. And then you have your acceleration curve back into electrification 3 years from now.
But what about our infrastructure? I mean, we're still operating like in the 60s. All the electric lines were put in back then. What about that? We need to have that infrastructure first before we can do all of this EV stuff.
Yep.
And the range.
Yep. Chicken and the egg, right? I mean, we even know infrastructure that does exist. About a third don't work when you find them anyway.
Correct.
The idea is you got to get creative. We always thought the manufacturer should say, hey, when you buy a BEV or plug-in hybrid from me, we're going to either give it to you for free or bake it into the cost of the vehicle, that we're going to line up your electrician and we're going to give you a charging system. So if I can help your convenience, that when you buy it, we have a calendar out and it says in the next 2 weeks, how can we be at your house to help and plug this in and set up a plugging station? Well, that's great. Ford just started doing that. Manufacturers have not been doing that. And to us, it was like, that is the easiest thing to do. You have to convince people to say, if I plug in every single night and I drive 40 miles a day on average, yes, I have some big trips, and this thing has a 250-mile range of battery per charge, I never have to use gas, or very, very rare. But you got to get them over that hump to that conversation. And that's where the problem is. So home charging needs to be more invested in. It needs to be more of, because that's where you're at, right? I mean, most of us don't drive that often, right? Your car sits in an office or at home. Yeah. And with COVID, a lot of people haven't even gone back to an office. So your car's sitting at home.
Correct.
So those are the areas to really focus on. But most people that hang their hat on infrastructure weren't going to buy anyway.
Right. So 2 months ago, I woke up in the morning, listened to my news, and all of a sudden I hear this thing about Toyota, Nissan, potential merger, and all that kind of stuff that went on. Kind of surprised me, to be honest with you, because Toyota, through the entire time after COVID, they really have been one of the biggest players out there, at least here in the U.S. from what I've seen here. And now with Nissan kind of wanting to do this global dance together, it kind of surprised me. Did that surprise you as well, or was that anticipated?
Well, it was Honda, right? So Honda basically,
excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So,
yes.
So Nissan basically needed another partner. When they dissolved the relationship, when the Renault relationship went away, Nissan doesn't hold a leadership position anywhere in the market, anywhere they compete. At best, they're third. At best.
Right.
So they really needed some idea of saying, how are we going to get bigger? Now,
Right.
Nissan offers a great pickup truck, right? Honda doesn't really have a great pickup truck. You got Ridgeline, which is going to be phased out. It's basically a unibodied vehicle anyway on a
Correct.
a pilot. So that would be an offering from that perspective. And the big take though is being a Japanese company. Home Japan is fearing that someone other than a Japanese partner comes in. There was a rumor that Foxconn would want to play and say, hey, we'll be your savior. We'll have contract manufacturing in other places in the world and we'll work together. That was not in the cards for Japan. They're saying, look, we are Japanese branded. And if we dilute this with other areas, that might be a problem. It was proven out that there were no Nissan deal didn't really take shape. So they're not out of the woods yet. You're going to see they are slowing their plants down. Their Canton, Mississippi plant is sort of getting dialed down a shift. They have to reconsider their Mexico footprint. That might have to come up north to save some money if a tariff is applied.
Right.
They have entry level vehicles in tariff prone markets. I mean, we were talking about the Sentra and the Versa coming out of Mexico, and now you slap a tariff on that thing. Boy, that thing becomes a lot less competitive because entry-level vehicles you can't pass on the consumer. All of a sudden, you're going to lose that consumer. So someone's got to eat it. They are still, the Honda came in and said, look, we have great demands. They were aggressive demands. One of them was, we think that your current leadership is no good. And what did Nissan do? Fine, we're going to get a new CEO. So there was a time where Honda was in the conversation, then they were out of the conversation. Now that Nissan has responded with change of CEO of what they wanted, they might be back in the conversation. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't think Japan would want one of their brands to die, but how do you get there? Now, Toyota is the big dog, so it made logical sense for number 2 and number 3 in Japan to get together to not be number 1, but be a combined number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah.
So if you put your finger on the pulse this year, what would you look out for? What would you tell the listeners to look out for 2025?
Where the vehicle is produced is a big problem. I mean, Volkswagen and Nissan are highly exposed. A significant portion of Volkswagen and Nissan's North American production is in Mexico. So if that gets hit with a tariff, that makes it very difficult. I would pay attention to the balancing act of powertrains. I'm not saying everyone should go buy a BEV, but really, hybrids are great vehicles. They are, and if it's just a standard hybrid, which has regenerative braking, there is a benefit to it. And the fact that they need to move this metal. A lot of manufacturers are worried about the next 6 months. High inventories at most of them, other than like Toyota and Honda, but a lot of the non-Asian based manufacturers have high inventories. It gives the consumer the benefit to go and maybe make some deals because they want to move that metal.
Do you think that right now with all the tariffs and things that are going on, do you think the used car market will benefit from that?
Well, the used car prices are seen to be going up because of this, because they're saying, hey, we got something that's cheaper, but it's not as expensive as that. So we got an opportunity and it's here already. So there's no tariffs. Where we see we're calling for another bubble in 3 years, and this is where we see it. Manufacturers trying their hardest to convince people that plug is not a disruptor. So you can get a Lightning for $400 a month. You can get a Lyriq for $299 a month. It's hard to beat some of these prices. Try this thing out. Well, if you get a 3-year lease, the residual in that vehicle is not going to be too good at that current number. So they're going to hand those keys back, and it's going to put that car back in the used car business. Now, 3 years from now, just as the manufacturer trying to push a $45,000 good, really solid BEV, here comes a really nicely used $28,000 one, $30,000 one. So now you're going to flood the market with these people that tried it and didn't want to buy out after the lease, going against new products. The manufacturers have to find a sweet spot. They need a nice $45,000, very highly capable BEV. Rivian is going to try that with the R2 and R3. Sweet spot pricing. Scout's going to come out with Volkswagen. They're going to be basically a competition to Rivian at the same time, using Rivian's brains in all their cars. So yeah, you need that sweet spot. But what you're really seeing right now, which is the real problem in the market, is because of the uncertainty, manufacturers who previously planned, let's say, a vehicle to exist for 4 or 5 years are going, look, we got to push out this next generation because this next generation is so focused on a new powertrain that no one's buying.
Yeah.
We're going to make the current generation longer.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it a 7 and 8 year vehicle. The problem with that is the suppliers negotiated agreements on a 5-year vehicle, not an 8-year vehicle.
Correct.
So some have already put their capacity of production to someone else, or material costs have gone up, tariff issues, all the pricing has gone up, and they have to renegotiate how are we going to make this vehicle at a profitable margin.
Right.
So, you know, the industry is a constant of push and pulls that are going on. But the consumer could be in a good situation if rates can come down, and if they can look at brands that have significant inventory that the metal's got to get moved, they might have some buying power.
Well, it's going to be definitely an interesting 2025.
Oh, absolutely.
Gas prices came down a little bit at least, so that's good. So that's helping that out, but it will definitely be an interesting year. Give me some final thoughts, because I could be talking to you for the next hour because it's an interesting topic, and I don't want to do that because I promised you I wouldn't. But give me your final thought on what we can see and maybe certain things that we should really pay attention to. Some final thoughts.
I mean, look, final thoughts are pay attention to what's going on in terms of the electrification mandates, the tariff issues. Unfortunately, when things are not poured concrete, it's very difficult for people to make decisions, right? You've already said Honda's going to move their Civic up from Mexico to Indiana, right? You're going to see anyone coming to North America, they're going to look at the United States for investment. So expect more vehicles to be built here over the next few years. But the idea is you can't stifle innovation. If we are in this constant idea of on-off, tariffs, no tariff, China, yes, China, no, Russia, yes, Russia, whatever it is, investment comes to a screeching halt, and nothing gets done. So if you look at the president right now, he is a businessman first, president second. I think eventually he'll say, look, you know, this constant wave of uncertainty has to slow down at one point, because we're going to do is stifle innovation. So I'm hoping we're sort of coming to a pinch point there, where he's coming out firing the first 60, 90 days with everything he wants, and then things will level off.
Drop off.
But that's, unfortunately, we don't have the crystal ball on that in terms of when that's going to stop. But when that does slow down, I think you're going to see a massive push for innovation.
Right. Well, if you get that crystal ball, call me up.
Definitely. Yes, definitely.
Well, Joe, I appreciate every single time you come on this show. I think it's certain that we'll see each other again in 2026, which seems like such a long way away. Yeah. But it will definitely be a very interesting 2025. And I'll thank you for being again on this podcast. It's always a pleasure.
Michael, pleasure's all mine. And maybe we want to do this half a year. Let's talk in 6 months and see where we're at, how crazy the market is. Who knows?
You know, if that happens, that really means that things turned upside down and there's more to talk about. So
absolutely.
Joe, thanks so much. Hey, to all of you listeners out there, you heard it here first. 2025 will be one heck of a year when it comes to the automotive industry. So keep your eyes tuned and your ears tuned for all of the things that are happening. Go to Joe's website, AutoForecast Solutions. He just came back from Alabama from a talking engagement here. I know he was over there, I think March 6th it was. Yeah. And he's constantly on the road talking about the crystal ball that he has or not have. So we'll see what happens. But thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the All Access podcast. We truly hope you found our discussions valuable to you, and they're also insightful. We hope you enjoyed it for sure. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you are getting your podcast. Feel free to share the episode with your network. Leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback, of course. For more updates, follow us on Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. And until next time, keep shaping the future of manufacturing, my friends. And out you go. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining this episode of All Access. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about manufacturing technology solutions and Tevis's capabilities, visit our website at Tevis. That's TEBIS.com.